Today on the Big 3 in 30, the NCAA denies Trinidad Chambliss' appeal to play.
The NCAA's recent actions towards Trinidad Chambliss can fairly be described as hostile.
Joey Aguilar gets a TRO to stay with the Vols for now.
Tennessee's quarterback, he is suing the NCAA.
And Gonzaga basketball loses on the road to Portland.
Absolutely brutal, embarrassing, and historic loss.
This is the Big 3 in 30 College, the three biggest stories on campus from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 College starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Trinidad Chambliss wants to keep playing college football, but the NCAA has denied his appeal for eligibility. Locked On Ole Miss host Stephen Willis tells us what's next as Chambliss tries to get back to the Rebels.
We're going to dive into the NCAA once again. They're shifting their stance ahead of the February 12th preliminary injunction hearing. The NCAA's recent actions towards Trinidad Chambliss can fairly be described as hostile, a posture that appears to be more strategic than final, and especially with the court proceedings looming. We'll talk about that. We'll break it all down, what this means, why it matters, and what could come next. All of this on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is, and that is your team every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Now, so Trinidad Chambliss's NCAA waiver appeal meeting was supposed to happen yesterday. And about 2:00 in the afternoon, Pete Thamel put out a tweet releasing the documents of the NCAA's rebuttal to the lawsuit for the hearing that is going to happen on February 12th. And it is unsurprisingly weird, but the one thing that got my attention is the fact that the NCAA completely changed their story over the course since the last time they talked. If you remember, when they denied the waiver, which was a couple of weeks ago, they said that Ole Miss and Ferry State and nobody has replied with any sort of records that was asked for. Nothing. They got absolutely zilch. Remember, Ferry State, they're not helping. Ferry State is not playing ball. And it's not so much the bureaucracy that we talked about yesterday to where the left hand's not telling the right hand what they're doing, kind of with Division II and Division I. This was the NCAA saying that nobody is for this at all. Trinidad Chambliss is obviously just trying to get a 37th year of eligibility, and there's no chance of what's going on. Immediately after they said that, Tom Mars, who has all of the documents because he's an intelligent lawyer as well, posted on Twitter actually notes saying that, hey, we believe in this. And coaches saying, yes, he was injured and deserves another year. Yes, he had this going on. All of this happened in the legal proceedings that counteracted what was said by the NCAA earlier. Then on, I guess it was last Tuesday or something like that, sometime around that period. If my date's wrong, I apologize for that. Ole Miss went ahead and filed the lawsuit in the Chancery Court Circuit of North Mississippi. The hearing is going to take place in Pittsboro, Mississippi. Look that up if you haven't, because it's a town of about 275 people. I hate to know the rich person that got them to build a courthouse in that town, but I digress. The hearing is going to be there in Pittsboro, Mississippi. The NCAA replied to that hearing basically saying, hey, we have this. We got 91 pages of contemporaneous medical knowledge. What they said they did not happen just week before. They talked about not having it, and that was their justification for originally denying it. Now they're saying they have it, but they don't agree with Dr. Howard, the doctor involved in the case, in what he said about the patient. They went on to talk about what they think the notes are supposed to mean, and not going by what the actual doctor said was going on during that. This is going to be a case when the hearing happens. It's going to be an absolute field day for everybody involved on Trinidad's side. One thing that's interesting, I asked the question to basically anybody that would listen, what is your expectation for today? And did today go like you thought it would? I asked it to multiple people, and they came back and said the NCAA is a huge bureaucracy, just like we talked about yesterday. This is big government at the worst. That is what the NCAA is right now. So what they expect to happen, okay, let's break this into two things. What they expect to happen is the NCAA to continue kicking the can down the road until the hearing on February 12th. On that hearing, whenever Trinidad Chambliss is granted the extra year of eligibility, just like Joey Aguilar, just like the basketball player at Alabama, when that happens, the NCAA will be in a position to approve the waiver after that, so they don't have to deal with the stain of having an L in the courtroom. That is my opinion as far as how they're going to go. But they do think it's going to go to the hearing of just kicking the can down the road. As far as today goes, they said that it kind of went the way that they expected it. And the NCAA desperately trying to get Congress involved. You can see why they're kicking the ball down the road, kicking the can down the road. And they're trying to have 3 high priority cases back to back to back so they can get the attention of certain politicians to prevent stuff like this from happening again. The NCAA is completely toothless. They are. There's not a lot that they can do in enforcement. There's not a lot that they can do in eligibility. There's not a lot that they can do at all, but they still exist. Mainly because nobody wants to take the responsibility of governing all these schools. But right now, they find themselves in a pretty precarious situation where if they do not get help, like major antitrust help, which is never coming, by the way, if they do not get that, they are going to fail because they have become so toothless that any accusation you make at anybody immediately ends up in court. And it's going to be filed in these state courts, not the federal courts, to where you're doing all. And that's what the NCAA would want, is the federal courts. No, it's going to be in state courts because the NCAA is not incorporated anywhere. They're not incorporated in Delaware, Indiana, any of those states. It's not incorporated. And because of that, they are residents of every state that they have a member institution in, which means they are members of all 50 states, which puts them on the hook to be sued in any particular state with what's going on. And that is the legal loophole kind of right now that is happening. All of this is extremely good news for Ole Miss. It shows with the NCAA changing their story yet again on this. They have a loser on their hands. They're going to try and fight. They're going to do the performative BS. They're going to try to make it happen. But this is the most open and shut case that I think is out there right now. I think there's justification for not granting Joey Aguilar. I think there's justification for the basketball player at Alabama not to make it. I don't know if there's any justification for Trinidad Chambliss. Let's remember about this. Trinidad Chambliss is applying for a 6th year of college. And he's not going after year 9, year 8, all of these that the NCAA are just granting to people and throwing out like candy at the moment. 6 years. Of those 6 years, Trinidad Chambliss has only played 3. So this would be his 4th year in college. And let's just be real about this. Him not getting the waiver would cost him $6 million, which is more money than he could make in the NFL likely in 2026. There's very real consequences and damages for Trinidad Chambliss right now. The NCAA gets nothing except profit if Trinidad Chambliss plays in 2026. Best player in college football, Heisman favorite, all of that stuff is there for Trinidad Chambliss if you approve the waiver. But the NCAA is dug in. They are hostile towards Trinidad Chambliss right now, and they are completely dug in. Listen, by the time you watch this video, it could all change. Every bit of it can change. But the important thing to realize is Trinidad Chambliss has the best case of anybody that is applying for waivers, period. That includes what Diego Pavia did. This is in the eyes of Tom Mars, the attorney, who claimed to the NCAA, unless the NCAA has an irresistible desire to stick their face in a fan blade, you need to approve this waiver.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season, it's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 College. Tennessee quarterback Joey Aguilar took to the courts to try and get more eligibility, and he was given a temporary restraining order to stay with the Vols. Locked On Vols host Eric Kane breaks down what comes next for Aguilar.
Joey Aguilar is fighting for another year of eligibility. Tennessee's quarterback, he is suing the NCAA. Yesterday, he was granted a temporary restraining order, and here in the near future, he's going to be trying to be granted preliminary injunction. What does all that mean? What's the next step for him? We're going to kind of go over that here in segment number 1 and 2. And if Joey Aguilar is Tennessee's QB1 in 2026, does that change anything when you look at that daunting schedule ahead? Chris Gordy, my chat with him on Locked On SEC from Monday night, Tuesday morning. Some of it's a little outdated now, but it kind of gives a base solid ground of kind of where we started the week, what's going on, why Joey Aguilar is doing this, the merits to his case, the possibilities and all that. Plus, it kind of gets into more conversation about, if not Aguilar, what are the other options in Tennessee's pulse of Josh Heupel right now. Fun show coming up, talking tons of Joey Aguilar in the court systems right here on your Thursday Lockdown Balls, part of the Lockdown Podcast Network. Your team every single day, the number one sports podcasting network available. And big shout out to everydayers. Join the Everydayer Club, just $5 a month, lockdownballs.supercast.com. All right, so it was Wednesday that Joey Aguilar was granted a temporary restraining order. And I think this is important to remember the difference between being eligible to play and what a TRO is right now. You look at Charles Bediako from Alabama right now, the basketball player. He is currently playing on a TRO, but a TRO is anything but final. It is a temporary restraining order between player and the NCAA, meaning the NCAA cannot do anything to disqualify, to hold Alabama in a lesser regard, stuff like that. Like, they can't do anything or they will be in violation of the courts, and you obviously don't want to do that. So the reason why it's a big deal for Charles Bediako is he filed in the middle of the season. I'm not getting into, is it right for him? We talked about that on yesterday's show. I did an immediate reaction Wednesday afternoon to the announcement that Joey Aguilar was granted a temporary restraining order. So go back and check that out. We have a larger conversation on, is this good for college football and all that. I'm not here to talk about Charles Bediako. Is it good or is it bad? It's bad. But the reason it's a big deal for him is he filed during the season. So he was put on a 10-day TRO, but due to the weather, they couldn't get back together and reconvene, so he was extended a TRO. So essentially he's playing 20 days for Alabama, but eventually that TRO is gonna run out. And the next step for him is a preliminary injunction as well. If he's denied a preliminary injunction, he can't play anymore, to my understanding. If he's granted a preliminary injunction, he'll likely play the rest of the season because, again, it's just something that kind of kicks the can down the road a little bit. The next step for Joey Aguilar, he's on a TRO right now. If Tennessee was playing football on Saturday, this would be a huge deal, but Tennessee doesn't play football until September, right? So a TRO is just kind of that first step, and it's a good step. Doesn't mean Joey Aguilar is going to be Tennessee's quarterback in 2026. No, it doesn't. But again, it's a good first step. The next step is that preliminary injunction hearing. It's coming up in the near future. If it's granted, that's great. That doesn't mean for sure that he's going to be Tennessee's quarterback because we have to see what the NCAA is going to do. How hard would the NCAA push back on that? How hard would the NCAA be fighting Joey Aguilar at the Knox County level? I don't know. We'll see. In inverse, if it's denied and Aguilar appeals that denial, how long will that take? I mean, preliminary injunctions pretty much just kick the can down the road. But the hope is you keep kicking and kicking and kicking, and then, Joey Aguilar would be, or whoever, would be able to play the duration of the 2026 season. So we'll continue to break things down on, what the verdict is for that preliminary injunction denial, if it's granted, what that means moving forward. We'll get that at a later date. But the TRO, it's a good first step, okay? And we talked about it on yesterday's show and everything. I mean, it's smart of Joey Aguilar to pull out of the Diego Pavia lawsuit, okay, which essentially they're wanting the same thing. Pull out of that, go to a local level, get out of federal court, go to a local level and file in Knox County. And that's what Tennessee did. That's what Joey Aguilar did. He filed in Knox County the same way Charles Bediako filed in Tuscaloosa, the same way Ole Miss star quarterback Trinidad Chambliss is filing in his local court as well. And that's the smart move. Again, all three cases are very different, but you're finding success through Trinidad Chambliss or through Charles Bediako, and it feels like everybody's already assuming that Chambliss is going to be Ole Miss's quarterback next year. His case is a little bit different than the other two, and Joey's case is different from Charles Bediako and all that. But nonetheless, it was a smart move to do it that way, because if the Diego Pavia lawsuit that's got 25 different 24 now different plaintiffs, if it's granted, that same court would file on a federal level, and then likely a blanket waiver essentially would be bestowed, and like Joey Aguilar would likely be covered in that as well. So you're still covered over there, but if that's denied, Aguilar still got his thing going on a local level here in Knox County. I just think it's a really, really smart move in my expert legal opinion, which is not very good. The judge granted the TRO on 4 basic reasons, according to documents obtained by On3. Plaintiff has demonstrated a substantial likelihood of success on merits of his claim that the NCAA's JUCO rule violates the Tennessee Trade Practices Act ability to go make money, right? Because those years are taken away from him, he's inhibited from making the $2 million that Tennessee's essentially approximately going to pay him to be the quarterback here next year. Immediate and irreparable injury will result to the plaintiff if the restraining order is not issued. Every day that Aguilar's future remains uncertain leaves him unprepared or unable to prepare for the next step of his career, that being the quarterback at Tennessee or that looking for an NFL future and trying to get ready for the NFL draft. The balance of harms favor plaintiff. The request relief runs only to Aguilar, and the NCAA suffers no harm in Aguilar playing NCAA football for a 4th full season. The NCAA waived the JUCO rule for Aguilar and hundreds of other athletes in 2025. Again, that was how Diego Pavia got the blanket waiver. Joey Aguilar was a part of that, right? It's kind of funny. I've been saying it several times this week. If not for Diego Pavia, nobody would know the name of Joey Aguilar, right? But since he got another year, went to UCLA, made his way to Tennessee, now he's fighting for another year. I think that's kind of funny. But I like how it says in here, the NCAA suffers no harm in allowing Aguilar to play NCAA football for a 4th season. The NCAA waived the JUCO rule for Aguilar and hundreds of other athletes in 2025. In the lawsuit, the complaint filed from Aguilar's team to the Knox County court system when they sued the NCAA essentially said he's played in Knoxville, he's played in this area, he's going to continue to play in this area. This is where he's going to play football, so he's not going to be leaving or anything. I thought that was interesting as well. The last reason that the TRO was granted, according to these documents, no adequate remedy of law exists before a hearing can be held due to the time-sensitive nature of the plaintiff's claim. Each day that passes leaves Aguilar unable to prepare and jeopardizes major career opportunities, lost time, and opportunities that cannot be fully calculated or remedied with money damages. So, again, a lot of stuff that I don't quite understand, but essentially the gist of it is not being allowed to make money right now. The urgency in it is like, hey, if I'm going to play football, I need to know now, or I need to go prepare for the NFL draft, and how the JUCO rule is kind of inhibiting that. So those are the 4 reasons that the judge granted the TRO, but it's important to remember the TRO is granted. That's good, but it's just the first step. Just the first step in terms of what's to come. You need to get that preliminary injunction hearing granted as well, ruling granted as well, and then things start getting real. Again, that doesn't mean it's over, but you're in the driver's seat, in my opinion, if you get a preliminary injunction for sure. So, good day. And again, if you want to have the conversation on, is this good for college football? Is this good for Tennessee? I did it on yesterday's show. I encourage you to go back and check on it. You can be of the opinion that this is bad for college football, but it's good for Tennessee if you're a fan, right? Because that's probably how you should feel, probably how you are feeling. Because the pace is out of the bottle. The toothpaste is out of the bottle. It's never going back in. And you see Baylor do it. You see Alabama doing it. You're seeing Diego Pavia has already done it. You're seeing all these different examples across the country. So if you're Tennessee and or Joey Aguilar, go shoot your shot.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season, it's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30. Gonzaga took a shocking loss on the hardwood last night, falling to the Portland Pilots in a game that the Bulldogs almost never led. Andy Patton goes over what went wrong on Locked On Zags.
Gonzaga goes into the Child Center at the University of Portland for the final time and leads for just 32 seconds in an absolutely brutal, embarrassing, and historic loss to the Portland Pilots. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about the good, which will not take very long. We are going to talk about the bad, which will be the majority of the show. We'll talk about the 5 things to watch for that we laid out before the game, including some things that had a significant impact on this game on Wednesday night. And we'll close out the show talking about whether this is truly the worst loss that Mark Few has ever taken in terms of significance and expectations going into the game. And we'll also talk about the NCAA tournament expectations, what this means for Gonzaga at this point. If you're still holding on to hope for a 1 or even a 2 seed, you might want to temper your expectations. Quad 3 losses don't tend to help in that regard. This was Gonzaga's first loss to the University of Portland since 2014. Mark Few, this was the 50th time that he has coached against the University of Portland Pilots, and he was 47-2 prior to this game on Wednesday night, which the Zags lost 87-80. Again, Gonzaga lost in Spokane to the University of Portland back in 2003, and then they lost at the Child Center in 2014, team led by Alec Wintering, very, very good UP team, and that was a very down year for Gonzaga. This is not a down year for Gonzaga. They've been stumbling a little bit as of late. We saw the narrow win over San Francisco. Certainly we saw the game back on January 2nd against Seattle U. But here's the thing, Gonzaga hadn't lost a game since November. This is Gonzaga's first loss. They've won every game in December. They've won every game in January. The calendar flipped to February, and suddenly they take a just shocking, unexpected loss. I mean, they just did not look remotely, frankly, interested in playing basketball on Wednesday night. Like, it was a really, I'm struggling with words almost. And for those of you who are regular listeners, not something I struggle with very often, but it was hard to pin down what exactly the problem was. I mean, Gonzaga, they got boat raced right out of the chute in this game. They were down 15-5. I think Few called a timeout before the first media timeout of the game. Mark Few had already called a timeout. They were down 13-5. And then they chipped away a little bit. At that point, they took a lead. Their first lead of the game was at the 6-minute and 55 mark of the first half. Mario Saint-Superi drilled a three. I think this came just after Venters had drilled a three. So they had a 1-point lead. 32 seconds later, Portland scored to take the lead. They then went on a 14-7 run to close out the first half with a 6-point lead. Gonzaga never got back in this basketball game until the final 40 seconds when a couple of turnovers by UP, they started to panic a little bit. Gonzaga got it within 5, which frankly, I'm shocked that they got this thing back within 5. They were down 15 for most of the second half, or like 10 to 15 points. Every time they'd get it within 8, they would get it to within 8 or 7 points, somewhere in there. And then UP would get an and one, or UP would get an easy dunk at the rim, or UP would get a 4-point play because Graham Ike high-fived a 3-point shooter for some reason. And then they would be down 12 or down 10 or down 11. And then they'd get it back within 8, and then they would be down 12. And they just could not make up any ground in this basketball game. I told you the good section would be quick. I mean, I guess Davis Fogel was fine in this game. He had 10 points off the bench. In this one, he was 4 of 9 shooting, which isn't great. But like, again, we're grasping at straws here. He had 4 rebounds, 3 assists. I guess I point him out because 3 assists and 0 turnovers is pretty good. Gonzaga's assist to turnover ratio wasn't bad. 19 assists, 9 turnovers. That's pretty good. I mean, they had 9 turnovers. Portland had 17. That's not a stat you typically see in a game you lose, and a game you don't lead for 39 minutes of. But it didn't matter in a positive way for Gonzaga. They didn't turn the ball over, but their shot selection, I mean, we'll get to the bad. I guess we can get there now because I don't have Braden Smith made all 4 of his free throws. Like, that's a good thing that happened in this game. I thought I'll give him a little bit more credit. He was fine in this game. He had 3 steals, 3 of Gonzaga's 8 steals. He hit a mid-range jump shot at the end of the game that brought Gonzaga within 5, I believe it was. He made one of his threes. Like, he was fine in this game. Mario was also fine. His stats aren't great because he threw up a couple of desperation threes at the end of the game, but he was fine in this game. He had 2 assists and 0 turnovers. The 2 point guards combined to have just 1 turnover. That's good. Sure. Let's get to the bad stuff. Everything else. Every other part of this basketball game was bad. There's really no other way to spin this thing. Gonzaga got out-rebounded by a team that ranks 255th in the country in rebounds per game. Frankly, the fact that they only got out-rebounded by 5 is kind of shocking because they were doubled up at halftime. UP had 18 rebounds at halftime. Gonzaga had 9. Perhaps more shocking, and I do not have the time or, frankly, currently energy to look up this stat, but I have to imagine that might have been the longest into a basketball game Gonzaga has ever gone without getting a rebound. Their first rebound in this game was grabbed by Tyon Grant Foster on the defensive end, and it was the 12-minute and 41-second mark of this game. So 7 minutes and 19 seconds of gameplay happened before Gonzaga had a single rebound in this game. UP had 6 at that point. And you might be thinking, wow, 7 minutes of basketball, only 6 total rebounds. Yeah, that's the other thing. UP wasn't missing at all. They just were not missing shots in this game. Gonzaga ended up getting the rebounding margin a little bit closer, actually ended up finishing with 13 offensive rebounds. A lot of that came very end of this game when UP was more focused on defending the perimeter than grabbing rebounds. So like the stats are kind of misleading there. Gonzaga got absolutely munched on the glass in this game. Inexcusably bad. Rebounding is about a lot of things, and certainly not having Braden Huff mattered, but at its core, rebounding is about effort. Gonzaga got out-efforted on the glass in this game by a team that has no business out-rebounding them. Shout out to the Portland Pilots. I don't want to sound like I'm belittling them on this podcast because they played great and they played inspired and they had a game plan and they executed it and they won their basketball game, and they deserve all of the credit for all of that. But Gonzaga came into this basketball game, I think, expecting to win, and played for most of the first half and most of the really until the last few minutes, like they were just expecting that they were going to magically come back in the game. And they never did. And it never happened because I don't know if they're all just waiting for each other to pick it up or what the deal was, but the effort was never there from the opening tip until the very end of this basketball game. It just was not there. Gonzaga's shot selection was a disaster in this game. They settled for threes, and they didn't shoot that bad from three. Again, the stats, 33% is not good, but they were shooting better than that for most of this game. They're 7 of 17 in the first half. I think they were like 3 of their first 6 or 7 in the second half. So at that time, they were like 10 of 24, 10 of 23. Like, they looked pretty good. They missed a bunch down the stretch. A lot of those were desperation threes in the final like 40 seconds. So like the stats a little bit misleading there, but my concern wasn't the three-point shooting. The three-point shooting was fine. They took way too many of them. Way too many threes. I do not know why they were so hell-bent on shooting from the perimeter when they weren't missing Graham in this game. He was there. He was playing. And I think the first 4 possessions they shot threes, they weren't even trying to get Graham the ball. And then when they did, he wasn't turning and squaring. He was like kicking it out. Like they had no offensive identity in this game. And they were just rattling off threes. This is not the team that we have seen Gonzaga be this year. Their offensive identity was poof, gone. The style they play, the game plan was either Gonzaga's players just adamantly refused to execute the game plan for some reason, or the coaching staff had a crappy game plan. I don't know which one of those two things is true, or if it's a combination of both of those things, but I will tell you this right now, and I say this very rarely. Mark Few got flat out outcoached. Shante Leggins on one leg, if you didn't see the game, he was in a walking boot and he was literally on one of those scooter things, hopping around, yelling at the referees on one leg, and he ran coaching circles around Mark Few, and that is inexcusable. I do not know why or how that happened, but they got 2 days to figure it out before they play Oregon State, because I don't think Wayne Tinkle is going to outcoach a whole lot of people, but I wouldn't have said that about Shante, and that's what happened on Wednesday night. It does not help when the most versatile and one of the most talented players on this roster, Jalen Worley, just doesn't show up. 3 points on 1 of 2 shooting. He had 1 rebound. This dude had 7 rebounds against the Twin Towers at St. Mary's 3 days ago, and he had 1 rebound in 20 minutes against a team that's not even in the top 250 in terms of rebounds per game. More turnovers than field goal attempts in this game. Just an inexcusably bad performance from Jalen Worley, and you needed him. Emmanuel Innocente undid all the goodwill he had from Saturday's game. He was a non-factor in this game completely. Tyon Grant-Foster went 5 of 8 from the free throw line, but missed key ones down the stretch, 2 of 6 from the field. I mean, I could pick anybody on the box score here and tell you they didn't have a good game. Gonzaga shot very poorly from the free throw line. That's not even new. We're just used to that at this point, but it sure didn't help down the stretch when they kept getting fouled and were actually cutting into the lead, except that they kept going 1 of 2 from the line, or 1 of 2, 0 of 2, very rarely going 2 of 2 from the free throw line. It just absolutely killed them.
That's all for today's Big 3 in 30 College. If you follow pro basketball or football, the Big 3 in 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and the NFL going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA or the Big 3 in 30 NFL, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 in 30 College.